I'm going to go ahead and start the recording now. So I want to say thanks to everyone for coming. Everybody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Very good. All right. Very good. So appreciate everybody coming on. And again, this is a first for me to host a Zoom meeting, so we'll give it a go. And if there's something that you like to see a little different or changed or whatever, you can get with me afterwards and let me know. But we will continue with our study and the second lesson. We ended up Wednesday talking about Manasseh and his reign and all the things that he did and all the things that he caused Israel to sin in or Judah to sin in. But he did get a change of heart when he was taken captive to Babylon. And he came back and he attempted to reform the worship in Israel. Unsuccessfully, because he couldn't change their hearts, but he did successfully get to where they were only worshiping the Lord God. That was one of the things that was said at the end there. And then after him was his son Ammon. And Ammon immediately turned around and put back in the things that Manasseh had taken out. But Ammon didn't last long because he was killed by some of his own people. And those people were killed. And then this young boy by the name of Josiah was put in place as king. How old was he when he was put in place? Gable?
He was 8 years old.
8 years old. So can you imagine being put in place as a king of a nation at 8 years old? That is pretty immature, very young. But what was significant about Josiah being put in place as king? There's two things that I've got in my mind, so I'm trying to get you to read my mind. What two things were significant in regards to Josiah being put in as king? Anybody have any ideas what I'm thinking?
He walked in the
Go ahead, Gable.
Lord.
Say that again.
I was just going to say he was the most righteous king in Judah since King David. It says that he walked in all the ways of his father David.
Okay. Jeremy, did you say something?
I was just saying the same thing Gable was, essentially.
Okay. All right. What was significant for, well, what was the thing that was significant for the entire kingship in the land of Judah? They were all of the same what?
Mine.
Bloodline. They were all the same family. Okay. So Josiah, to follow along with the coming Christ, which was going to be years down the road, makes sense for him to be king because he was in the lineage of Christ. He was in the bloodline. But what else is a reason that he was significant to be put in place as king? What was told about him before? Anybody remember?
It was prophesied that he would be one to kill priests and burn their bones.
Okay. Who prophesied that? I'll save that question. He doesn't have a name. It was just a man of God. If you remember back in the beginning of the divided kingdom, Jeroboam was king. He built the calves in Dan and Bethel. And God sent this prophet, a man of God, to go up and to prophesy against Bethel. And he did so. And he told him not to leave, come back the same way, and not to eat bread or drink water in the land. And he went and prophesied, called Josiah out by name. This was 300 years prior to Josiah being put in as king. And of course, we know how that story ended up. Another prophet came and chased him down and said, "Oh, but an angel of the Lord said for you to come back and eat and drink with me." And he believed him. Of course, the prophet lied, but he believed that he was telling the truth. And he went back, and of course, you know the story. The lion was on the road and met him as he was leaving and killed him. And his bones was buried in a grave. And what did that lying prophet say that he wanted to do? Where did he want his body buried?
He wanted to be buried with the man of God.
He wanted to be buried with the man of God. Okay. So he was. When he died, he was buried with the man of God that he lied to and caused to be killed by the lion because he caused him to go against what God had told him not to do. So we have that story tied in. Josiah is now made king. He's 8 years old, young kid. He is now king of Judah. And we see that his father, of course, was Ammon, bad man. Ammon's father was Manasseh, bad man. Now we see that Josiah, how long does it take him before he starts seeking the Lord?
He sought the Lord in his 8th year, so when he was 16.
Okay, so he starts reigning at 8. At the age of 16, he starts seeking the Lord. Now, at what age do we need to start seeking God? Before 16 would be my guess. Okay, we need to be seeking God from the time that we're born, and we know who God is, and we know about the Bible. But we have an example of this young man who had a terrible father, not a good example, but yet at the age of 16 years old, he was seeking God diligently. And guess what? He found him. All right? If you read the King's version of this story and then the Chronicles version of the story, does anybody notice a little difference in the way that the stories lay out? It's made clear in Chronicles, the chronology, but what about King's version? Anybody notice? Well, in the Chronicles version, he was made king at the age of 8. At the age of 16, he started seeking God in his 8th year as king. In the 12th year as king, what does he start doing? He starts purging Israel. He starts purging out all the idols. He starts cleaning up the land. And then in the 18th year of his reign, what happens then? What do they find?
Book of the law.
Book of the law, because he's repairing the temple. So we have in Chronicles, 8 years old, he's king. In the 8th year of his reign, he seeks the Lord. In the 12th year of his reign, he starts reforming. And then in the 18th year of his reign, he starts repairing the temple, finds the book of the law. And it goes through and tells you what all took place during that 12th year to the 18th year. That's when he purged all of Israel, did fulfill that prophecy, did all the cleansing of the temple and everything. You go back and look at the King's version, it talks about how he was put in as king, and then in the 18th year, they find the book of the law. All right. And then it goes in after that, talking about him purging all the land. So if you're not careful and you look at the way that the two passages read, you might get the idea that, well, he did all this purging after they found the book of the law, but that's not the case. Chronicles makes it clear. He started purging these people out, these false gods out, before the book of the law was ever found. So to me, that's a significant part of this story. Okay, because he sought God in the 12th year of his reign. He had 4 years seeking God. He started getting rid of all the false gods. he started getting rid of all the idols that was in the land. And I mean, how far did he extend? He didn't stay in Jerusalem. He didn't stay in Judah. He went all the way up into the land of Israel, the northern kingdom, which had been disbanded. They were gone. They didn't exist anymore. But he still went up there and defiled the altars and the things that was prophesied that he would do. So before the book of the law and the reading of the law was done by him, he was very diligently cleansing the land of Judah. And to me, that's significant because that speaks a lot about his heart. It speaks a lot about his feelings on God and getting everything else out. And if you notice as you read through the material, some of the altars that he talks about that he removes were some of the ones that Manasseh had set up. So wait, I thought Manasseh had purged all that. Well, he'd gotten rid of all that. Well, he did try, but it's evident he didn't get rid of everything. The altars were still there. Some of the idols were still standing. They may not have been being worshipped, but they were still standing. But Josiah went in and he cleaned everything out. All the high places, all the priests that were serving at these high places, he defiled the altars by burning bones on them, and he completely wiped out all the idolatrous worship in the land of Judah. All right, anybody have any questions or comments up to this point?
I think it speaks more to his heart as well because they didn't even have the book of the law yet. He was just that zealous without even, direct commands from God through the word. That's just how zealous he was.
Well, that's my point. That you just compounded the point that I was making. His heart was right. He was seeking God, and he was finding God. And he was zealously going out and getting rid of anything that wasn't associated with the true God of Israel. And that was right before he even had the book of the law. So it kind of makes more of an interesting view on it when he does find the book of the law and it's read to him. Here's a young man. He's seeking God. He's out destroying all these false gods. He's trying to purge the land of all this sin and all this idolatry. And then he sends for the men in his 18th year to go and look in the temple, find the money so that they can repair it. And that money's going to be given to the workers without any accounting because they were very trustworthy of the people they were giving the money to. And Hilkiah, the high priest, goes in and he finds the book of the law. The book of the law is brought out and given to Shaphan. Shaphan gives it to the king. What does the king do with it when he gets it? He has it read. He has it read to him. Now, this is a young man who's seeking God diligently. He finds the book of the law. Well, what do we as Christians want to do in regards to learning more about God's word? Where do we go? We go to the scriptures. We go to the Bible. We read. We study. That's what Josiah wanted. He wanted to know. So he starts getting this book of the law read to him. What's his reaction?
He ends up
Jackson?
He ends up tearing his clothes and he mourns.
Why?
Pretty much they've been not following the words God had commanded them.
Okay, and what was going to be the result of that?
They were going to be punished for what they had done.
So here's a young man. His heart is seeking God. He's trying to find God. He's purging out all the idols. They find the book of the law. It's read before him. And in that reading, the same stuff that we study, God says, if you follow my commands, you will prosper. But if you turn to idols, and you do all these other things, I'm going to wipe your face off the earth. And when somebody hears about it, their ears are going to tingle because it's going to be so bad. How do you think Josiah felt when he heard that? Not good. That's why he tore his clothes. That's why he was upset, because he knew he had already been involved in purging out all this idolatry that was totally talked about in the law not to do. Yet they did it. And now he knows, oh no, this calamity is going to come upon us. So what does he immediately go and do when he finds this out? Abby?
He sends people to inquire of the Lord.
All right. He sends to get an inquiry from God. Like, oh, this has scared me. This has made me upset. I need to know if this is going to come to pass. So he's got to know. And he sends somebody to go and inquire of the Lord. And this lady that they sent to, what does she tell them? There's two main points that she tells them.
That all the curses would come upon the people, but that it wouldn't happen in the days of Josiah because of his righteousness.
Okay. Yeah. So Josiah is getting two messages back. He's saying, yep, all this stuff that's written in the law, all these things that's going to happen, they're going to happen. That's not good news. But then Josiah gets word, but it won't happen in your day, Josiah, because you've humbled your heart, you've humbled yourself, you have given, you showed your anger by tearing your clothes before the Lord, you've wept before God. It's not going to happen in your day. You're going to go to your grave in peace. Kind of comforting in a way, but yet it's not comforting for the people of God. They've got a death sentence now. And it's all because of who? Manasseh. It's all because of Manasseh, his grandfather. Okay, that's the key. His grandfather is the reason that all this is going to be coming about, because that was the camel, the stick, the last straw that broke the camel's back. There we go. All right, so Josiah, he finds the book of the law. He has it read before himself. He gets the temple worked on. He purges out all the idolatry, all the altars, all the things, all the high places. I mean, he goes and does things more diligently than any king ever before him. And that speaks a lot to Josiah. So he goes out and he takes care of all this. Next thing he wants to do, because he's read it in the law now, what is the main feast that they all partook of, or were supposed to all partake of? Anybody? Passover. All right. Make a quick side note here. This is an observation. May just be me, but I've noticed when it's not just Abby, but it's everybody, when you hit the mute button to unmute yourself, then speak, then mute back, because I'm not catching what you're saying. So unmute, wait a second, then speak. I think that'll help me be able to hear, and I won't have to get you to repeat it. It's probably the delay in the technology, but just try to keep that in mind as we continue on. So Josiah is going to have this Passover instituted. Now, what does it say about this Passover? Jacob, I'm going to ask you this question. What does the lesson tell us about this Passover compared to any in the past?
There wasn't any like it since the time of the judges.
That's right. There was not a Passover that was followed and done or performed or partaken of since the time of the judges, back in Samuel's day. I mean, that's impressive. You think about it. we're even talking about during the time of David and the time of Solomon. No Passover was partaken of in the way this one was in the 18th year of Josiah's reign. So did Josiah really go all out for the Lord? Absolutely. He went above and beyond. So for us, story of Josiah is let's pick it out. Let's look at all the details and apply it to us. I mean, we really got to be seeking God. We really got to try hard. We got to serve him. We got to seek him. We got to be pleasing to him. And look at Josiah. I mean, yeah, David was a great king. Everybody references back to David. According to the scriptures, Josiah's Passover institution was better than any David ever did. So let's set our hearts to seek God like Josiah did and purge out the sin, purge out all the idols, purge out all the bad stuff, and focus on seeking God and serving him. So that's a great lesson for us just in Josiah himself. All right, the Passover has been observed. He gets all the people of Israel, all the elders, they gather together. And this may have actually taken place before the Passover, but what do they all agree to do together in regards to God and his law? Kim?
To repledge themselves and like obey his covenant.
Okay, they recommitted themselves to his covenant. He recommitted himself to his covenant. So I just had a little pop-up said that the Zoom meeting is going to go over 40 minutes. So they're extending my time. Yay. All right. So anybody have any questions or comments at this point? All right. So the people agree into another covenant with the Lord. Josiah, all his days, strives to seek and serve God, purge out all the idols. And then we get close to the end of his reign. Who knows a little bit of history about what was going on around this time? Who's our history people?
Well, Egypt is involved with, again, since the days that they had been brought out of Egypt, they're kind of back in the picture again. And Josiah is going up against Necho, I think is the name.
Yes.
But he's advised not to. He does it anyway. And he is killed in the battle after disguising himself there.
Okay, so where was King Necho going?
To help the king of Assyria.
Okay, because what was the king of Assyria doing? Why did he need help?
He was fighting off the Babylonians that were coming across and down.
Okay, so just remember, the Assyrians, and that's why history is so important here. The Assyrians, the world power, they just wiped out the northern kingdom during the days of Hezekiah. Manasseh reigned for 55 years after Hezekiah, and in 2 years we had Ammon, and now we've got Josiah reigning for 31 years. So we've got, a spread of nearly 100 years. The Assyrian Empire at this point is failing. It's falling. The Babylonian Empire is rising. And the Assyrians are starting to lose battles with the Babylonians and the Medes. So Necho of Pharaoh of Egypt decides to come up and start to help the Assyrians to fight the Babylonians. And so that's where he's going. Now, he's skirting around or going through, but he's not bothering Judah. He doesn't have any plans to deal with Judah. But Josiah, for some reason, goes up to Necho and said he's going to confront him in battle because he's coming through the land. Now, was it because Josiah had read the book of the law and he understood now that God had said, don't ever count on Egypt, don't ever do anything with Egypt, put Egypt away? And maybe he read that and took that to heart. So anytime Egypt come into the picture, he was going to fight them. Maybe, don't know. That's total speculation. But it's interesting to think that as diligently as Josiah was seeking God, and now he read his law and was trying to follow his law, it would make sense that Josiah would not want to have anything to do with Egypt, because God multiple times said, stay away from Egypt. But the Egyptian king comes up and, did God tell Necho that he was doing this business? And was he the one that actually told him to go up and fight with the Assyrians? What do you think, Caleb Hester?
Oh, there we go. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Do you think, based upon what's written, did God actually talk to Necho and tell him to go up and fight the Assyrians? Fight with the Assyrians?
I'm not sure.
Okay. How about you, Joshua Belander?
I think it's possible, especially seeing since Josiah lost, but it's not recorded, so there's no way of knowing. I mean, God has dealt with other nations besides Judah and Israel in the past, so that's why I say it's possible. But Pharaoh also could have been lying. So.
Well, if you notice, the writer in the Chronicles says that Necho said, your God has sent me, or God has sent me up to fight this battle. And he told me to hurry. And Josiah didn't listen. I mean, because according to what's written, this was from God. God's plan was being put in place. And Josiah did not heed what was said by Necho, the Pharaoh. Instead, he disguised himself and went into battle. So just something to note. It is documented for us that God said to Pharaoh to go up and fight this battle. And it makes sense for Josiah to be out of the picture, because Necho my fight's not with you. He even said that. This ain't got nothing to do with you, Josiah. Leave me be. Your God sending me to do a task, and you just need to leave me alone. But Josiah didn't heed that. And Josiah went into battle disguised, and he ended up getting killed because he did not follow that advice from the king. He died in peace because there was no fight with Judah. There was no battle going on with Judah. Necho was going about doing his own business. Josiah is the one that initiated this battle. So just keep that in mind as you read these kind of things, you look at the history and the things that are said in regards to what happened. But Josiah ends up getting shot with an arrow, and he's driven back, and he dies, and he is buried in the tombs of the kings. And thus ends the reign of Josiah. Great king, a great example, a great example in regards to the young kid that he was when he came to the throne. And at 16, had to have some good influence in his life because he chose to seek God instead of indulging in all the sin and idolatry that was in the land at the time. And one of the questions that was in our material is, what did he get rid of, or what all was being worshipped at the time by the people of Judah? name some of the gods that he was, and some of the things that were being worshipped.
It says he got rid of the high places, the Baals, carved images, molded images, incense altars, wooden images, molded images, pretty much any kind of idolatry. It sounds like they were engaged in it, and he tried to get rid of it.
Okay. Manasseh was specifically stated. Manasseh was involved in the passing his children through the fire, children sacrifices. Josiah purged that. He got rid of it. He went up and totally destroyed it. All the altars that were built inside the house of the Lord, the one that Ahaz built in the upper chamber, all those altars were destroyed. They were taken out. He crushed them up and spread them out either over the common people, or he spread the dust out in the brook Kidron, or he totally got rid of those. And then all the carved images, wooden images of Ashram and the goddess of fertility, and the horses that were at the doorway of the house of the Lord that were for the worship of the sun, and the chariots that were associated with that. All these high places. They was worshiping the host of heaven, the stars, the moons, the constellations, the sun. You name it, they were worshiping it. I mean, it was bad. It was terrible. But he went, and it's amazing at all the different things he touched and got rid of in his time as king. And he diligently worked hard to get rid of all those things before his death. He reigned 31 years, which was a pretty decent amount of time for a good king to reign. And he did a lot of good for the nation, but yet it wasn't going to be good enough to stop the destruction coming, because it was already set in stone. Because of the sins of Manasseh, children of Israel would be punished, and they would be taken captive to Babylon. So anybody have any questions or comments?
I had one regarding how did Josiah know that the Pharaoh was like not trying to deceive him in saying that your God told me to go fight that war?
I don't know that he would have known that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that he would have known to believe that he was telling the truth, and that it was God that was truly sending him to do the bidding that he was doing. I mean, it was evident that he did believe him, because he turned around and fought him, which is exactly what he told him not to do.
I would say, along with that, I mean, he could have, if he had truly wanted to know, I'm sure that God would have been willing to answer if he had inquired before.
Yeah, inquiry of God would have been a good thing to have done at that point. But I mean, God promised him through that hold of the prophetess that you're going to die in peace. That was what he was told. He knew that. And he was the one going to pick this battle. Pharaoh wasn't picking the battle. Josiah picked the fight. So he did not heed everything that I think he could have heeded in regards to what happened when he lost his life. I think he could have done that a little bit differently. But God's plan is in place regardless. So things that happen for a reason. And our lesson is, we need to listen to God. Just like that prophet that went and prophesied against the altar at Bethel. God told him specifically, don't eat bread and water there, and don't come back the same way. It's pretty simple. And all it took was one old man to come up and say, God told me you need to come eat bread and drink water and come back with me. That's all it took for him to believe it. He didn't inquire of God. He didn't ask. He got lied to. In that instance, Pharaoh lying, possible, but wording is, and the scripture shows that he was being truthful. This ain't your fight. I'm not here to fight you. Go in peace. Let me do my thing. All right. Anybody else have any other comments?
You mentioned that Manasseh wasn't able to get the people to follow him. That seems like that was one of Josiah's biggest successes. And I love verses 31 and 32 of 2 Chronicles 34. It says, the king stood in his place and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments and testimonies. And then verse 32 says, and he made all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin take a stand. So the king, I like that it says the king stood, and then he made the people take a stand. I think that's such a key to good leadership, is you got to be on the front lines, basically. And all the people could look at him and see his sincerity and see his zeal and then follow him. Whereas Manasseh had been so wicked for so long, I think it could be a lot harder for the people to look at him and say, oh, yeah, I want to follow and do what he's doing. He seems a little bit more inconsistent.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things that I noticed is, typically when the law is read, who reads the law to the people? The priests, the scribes. Those are the ones that usually read the law. Who read the law to the people when they gathered together and it was found?
Josiah.
Josiah read it, the king. So yes, he was up front and center on all this, in every aspect of it. And that was one of the things that popped out this time in my studies, the fact that Josiah himself read the law to the people instead of having somebody else do it. He did it. So good point, Andrew. Thank you. Anybody else?
I think that's also why we see the entire nation weeping and mourning when he dies, unlike his father and grandfather before him, was because of the good example he set.
Yes, very good point. Anybody else? Well, Zoom class number 1 behind my belt. Yay. Appreciate your attention and your attendance. And we will pick up with lesson 3 Wednesday evening after service. So prepare to stay after church for that. And again, we'll just hit each lesson, each service, each class period. And if something happens in this 4 o'clock time doesn't work, or after service doesn't work, I'll try to give you a heads up. But feel free to ask me any questions, afterwards by email or whatever. I'm open for any kind of discussion. But I appreciate your attention, your attendance, and Lord willing, we will be together again on Wednesday. So thanks everybody for being here.